All right, it is 2 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. Since we're going to be talking about meetings, I guess we should start this one punctually. So today's meeting is a group committee orientation, something different that we haven't done in the past. Those that have been on committees know that typically the first committee meeting of each year, I do an overview of the committee roles and responsibilities, kind of a brief orientation before the committee kicks off. And myself and the board went to a conference at the end of last year. One of the things that was highly recommended in some of the better performing clubs was to try to do that same type of orientation in more of a group setting like this, with the opportunity to see some of the back of the house areas. The house committee and maybe the golf and green committee in years past have done behind the scenes tours of the kitchen and golf maintenance. But we thought it would be better if we could open that up to everybody. So we'll do that after we go through some of the roles and responsibilities of the committee. And I'll be going over that, and then Mrs. Boehning is our board president. She'll be going into some more specifics as far as goals for the committees for the coming year. One of the things that we'll talk about is the roles of the committee, and if you want to see more detail of these, they're all available either through the bylaws at section 5.16 in the bylaws, that's in the handbook, or on the website. There's also the committee general guidelines, and that's where all of this information comes from. Now the committees basically serve as an advisory role to the board and to management. A very important aspect of it is the communication conduit from the members back to the club. And you'll find out as committee members that if you're on the golf committee or on the house committee, you're the go-to kind of person now if all of a sudden the soup was a little cold in the bistro or maybe there was an issue on the golf course. So as I tell the board, you're not the complaint department, so don't ever feel that way. But it's important that you can let members know that you'll take the feedback back to your committee. And then we have that back and forth discussion at the meetings, especially those committees that are more of the amenity type committees. We're looking for that feedback. And that communication goes both ways. It's not just from the members in, but it's management's job at those committee meetings to keep the committee abreast of what's going on so that you can make sure that we can make sure that you have the tools to answer questions applicable to your area or the committee that you're serving on. Just as important as the roles of the committee, it also important is what the committee does not do. And we should point out that the committees do not set policy, make operating decisions, or commit funds. Now there are some rare exceptions to that. The ARC committee is a committee, an entity that actually can make decisions. There are times that the board could give the authority to a committee to make final decisions. For example, when we had the clubhouse renovation going on, that authority was given to the Clubhouse Improvement Committee because they were meeting every week during the renovation. But that authority would have to be delegated that way. And lastly, on the slide there, you see committees do make recommendations, and that is the vital importance of the committees because so much of the due diligence happens at the committee level. For example, if we're talking about dress code, maybe that's something that the House committee would be looking at, or maybe a rule, the applicable committee would be looking at that rule, and the committees then vet the situation. They're the ones that do all the due diligence and then make the recommendation to the board. Because if the board of directors were responsible for putting together and vetting, say, a dress code, well, we'd have 5-hour board meetings, maybe longer. The club's vision, mission, and core values, that's on the seat when you first came in. You'll see that on the table at all of our committee meetings and the importance of that. And the whole idea there is to make sure that any policy recommendations that are coming out of committees are with the club's vision, mission, and core values in mind so that we're advancing that. Likewise, the back of that form has the strategic plan's 9 objectives, and it's important that if committees are making recommendations that expend funds or a capital project, it's important that that's aligned with the strategic plan. The full strategic plan is on the website. If you go to the board and committees page, there's a strategic planning whole page. There is the strategic plan as well as management's action plan. The committee roles and responsibilities, as you can see here, are to provide input and make recommendations on a wide variety of things, from the long-term goals and strategic planning, budgets, capital purchases, renovations and expansions, at times user fees. So you can see that the committees have a huge role in how things develop for the future of the club. Again, they're at the recommendation capacity and eventually to the board, for the board to approve. What the committees are not responsible for are the day-to-day operations, making purchases, repairs, whether that be emergency or otherwise, and anything pertaining to personnel matters and the team members, the staff here at the club. And I should point out too, that actually applies to the board as well. Everything when it comes to employee matters falls under my responsibility through the department managers. The board solely looks after my performance. So everything that has to do with the team members is my responsibility with the team, with the management team, and then the board reviews my performance. And I'll keep that in mind for Kevin's performance when he shows up, shows up late for a meeting. No, Kevin said he was going to be a few minutes late. So the committee general guidelines, again, these are on the website. Basically, the general guidelines gets into the role of the committees, what the duties are, the meeting frequency, the communication responsibilities, somewhat into the size of the committee and the term limitations. But again, keep in mind, these are just guidelines. For example, the communications and information technology, right now we're working on the bulk services contract, which the Comcast contract is up at the end of 2020. We probably meet almost on a weekly basis, sometimes for hours on end. But if you look at that general guideline, it probably says as needed or on a quarterly basis. So it really depends on what projects are going on. Golf and Green right now is working on a project, so they have some more frequent meetings. So again, these are just general guidelines to give an overview. Committee meeting conduct. Just some general topics here as far as you as members of the various committees being prepared for the meeting, meaning if there's any reports, minutes that you're prepared and ready for the meeting. Ideally, we're sticking to the agenda and being respectful in our discussions, no sidebar conversations. Obviously, everyone is there to have a productive and active participation. And with that, not having agendas, not going into meetings with personal agendas. Conference call etiquette. So in the summer months, we have a lot of members that attend meetings by phone, and that's fine. Would just definitely recommend to call in a few minutes before the meeting starts, introduce yourself. Please put the phone on mute because it can be disruptive if there's background noise, and you being on a phone or a cell phone may not realize how disruptive that is. And still participate, of course, if you do, unmute the phone. And lastly, if you're tied up and busy and watching the grandkids, walking the dog, driving down the highway, if you're not going to be dedicated to attending the meeting remotely, then just don't attend. It's better off just to skip it than to somewhat participate but actually be disruptive. We've had committee meetings where people are driving down the highway and you could hear road noise and cars going by, and it's just not productive for the rest of the group. All committee members sign a code of ethics, and there's forms up here for those that haven't signed one. If you've served on a committee within the last few years, you would have already signed one, but if you're new to a committee within the last few years, I would ask you to just come up after the meeting and sign one of the forms there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Boehning to talk about the roles and goals of the committees.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for agreeing to participate, give your time, give your efforts to help Stonebridge grow and continue to be the type of community that you would like it to be. Many of you who volunteered for committees did not get the committee you wanted, or you volunteered for more than one committee and you only got yourself on one committee. And I'd like to explain that right up front a little bit. We had 115 or approximately 115 people volunteer for committees this year. I believe that that is an all-time high. Of those, 34 of you were not on a committee last year, and most of those weren't ever on a committee. 5 of the 34 are new to Stonebridge in 2018. So we have a wide variety of people with a wide variety of experience working with Stonebridge, and given that, we couldn't put everybody on more than one committee. There are a couple exceptions, they're rarefied. We also, several of you asked to be on committees with your husband or wife. We're sorry, but we did not seem to think that that was the most ideal situation, so you find yourselves on 2 separate committees. And lastly, we did try to place everyone. Again, it may not be your committee of choice, but everyone that we know applied for a committee is on a committee. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I want you to know that one of the things that we ask is that committee members have their own personal email address. Not every committee deals with sensitive information, but you never know when that's going to happen. I understand that Yahoo doesn't cost anything. So if you are on a joint email with your husband or wife or someone else, we would ask that you, for at least the year that you're on the committee, get your own email address so that we can more securely deal with committee information. One of the things that was said about the committees last year were that they were very collaborative, and that is such a good thing. And I think that one of the ways to become even more collaborative is for everyone to know what the other committees are doing. Very often we get ourselves involved in 1 or 2 committees, and we're really not sure what the other committees are up to or why they're doing what they're doing. So what I want to spend most of my time doing is telling you what each committee is going to be doing for the next year, we hope they're going to be doing. First of all, we have 10 standing committees. They are Communications and Information Technology, Community Standards, Finance, Golf and Greens, Grievance, Grounds, Facilities and Security, House and Member Services, Legal and Governance, Strategic Planning, and Tennis and Fitness. We have 3 ad hoc committees this year. Now these change. Ad hoc committees go away. Ad hoc committees can become part of the standing committee. A few years ago, Communications was an ad hoc committee. Today it's a standing committee. Our 3 ad hoc committees right now are Blue Zone, the Brooks Award, and Crisis Response. And then we have what I call 3 supporting committees. They are ARC, Hearing, and Nominating. Each of these committees has a special job, and I think you would like to know what those jobs are. I'm changing the order of the committees around in this discussion to tell you that there are 7 committees that I consider administration committees. The first of them is Finance, that is headed by Larry Trowell this year. Their job is the annual budget. It is to ensure the board that we have financial systems in place to prevent fraud and theft, and that we have sufficient funds being allocated for capital reserves for the event that we have to replace something like the roof of this building or anything else, and most of us don't want to be charged a whole lot extra for that in the future. So they are setting these funds aside so that we can reasonably expect to cover those costs. There are some specific requirements for this particular committee. If in fact you spent your life as a civil engineer, or if you spent your life as an interior decorator, there's a good chance they're not going to be asking you to join the Finance Committee. Sorry about that. They are looking for financial experience in this particular committee. We need that every year. We need a treasurer every year for the board. And so the Finance Committee is frankly the training ground for that particular activity. I think we all may have different opinions about what is important for the health of Stonebridge, but I think we would all agree that our financial health is a #1 priority, above and beyond almost anything else. The next committee is Legal and Governance. That's Tom Pinkerton. Legal and Governance job is to maintain the governing documents. That's the Master Declaration, the bylaws, and the board policy manual. It's their job to review changes and additions to these documents that are requested by the board or by a specific committee. They are there to review governance issues that are recognized by themselves. A few years ago, the committee, without the board coming to them or a committee coming to them, recognized that drones were becoming a problem in many neighborhoods. And so the committee took it upon itself to develop a policy that the board then passed. This particular year, I'm asking the Legal and Governance Committee to take on one extra issue, and that is the nominating committee process. We all know that there were some questions about that this year. So I have asked Legal and Governance to take a look at what our documents say about it, what the committee has been doing and what the committee needs to be doing, and tighten that process up so that in the future we won't have as many questions about it as we had this year. This group does not require a special legal license. This group requires simply a good head on their shoulders. Strategic planning is Gail Fisher. This, as its name indicates, is to plan for the future. They do this generally through member input, surveys, focus groups, people talking to them, just keeping their eyes and ears open what's happening in this community. This year, their focus is going to be on the results of the Synergy Solution survey that was taken. And I have to say, we did a great job as a community. Normally, we have somewhere between 15 and 20% participation. This year, we had 49%. 700 people, or approximately 700 people, answered this survey. 1,470 people were eligible to answer it. But a 50% or 49% answer is fabulous. And it should definitely tell us something about what this community is thinking about itself and where it wants to go. They will also continue to work on the master plan and the future planning of this community. The other committee is Communications and Information Technology. On the surface, they are responsible for continually improving communications between management and membership, board committees and membership, between membership groups, and between Stonebridge and outside groups, including prospective buyers. However, last year and this year, they are spending most of their time talking about the bulk services contract with Comcast that is up on December 31st, 2020. This is the contract that gives you your television. And this committee is looking at options of other providers than Comcast and other products that can be looked at. So they hope, or we hope, that they will be able to come forth to the community sometime at the end of the year or the beginning of next year and present their findings. That will be a year in advance. But I understand that it takes 6 to 7 months to really get a new product into the community, so they're working on that schedule. Nominating committee, that is my committee. Our job is to identify the needs of the board. One of them, as I mentioned, is finance. It is also to identify the persons and vet the persons who seem to show an interest in the community, want to work with the community, and want to give to the community and have a history of giving to the community. And then we introduce those people to the community. And we usually do this through the Meet the Candidates Night. After that, the committee oversees this nomination, the election process. As I told you, I've asked Legal and Governance to take a look at our process here and clarify it so that we'll all understand what this committee should be doing and how it should be doing it. We will not begin our work actually we will not begin committee meetings until September. Before then, the job of the people on this committee is just to look around, listen, note the people that take an effort and have an interest in the community and would be good for board membership. Finally, under administration, we have Grievance with the support of the hearing committee. The Grievance committee is headed by Tony Maglione. This is a committee that we hope never has to meet, to be very honest. But when it does have to meet, it is incredibly important towards maintaining our standard of being fair, being responsive to the needs of the neighbors. We don't like our neighbors arguing, but it happens. And this is a committee that has the happy or unhappy job to work with that. So I hope we don't see you this year, but if we do, thank you for taking this on. The next three committees have to do with appearance. They are ARC, Community Standards, and Grounds, Facilities, and Security. ARC is a small group. It is limited to 3 to 5 people by our documents. And once this committee is created, it is autonomous. It does not come to the board for permission to set a standard or to make a decision. What it does do is it comes to the board and reports to us on what its activities have been. The ARC pretty much has set the standards that it believes should be in place for the community. Now, the importance of all three of these committees, and ARC is right there, is that real estate brokers have told us that, first of all, first impressions count. And secondly, the one thing that we have to work towards, being a 20, 25-year-old community, is keeping ourselves from being dated. Now, we can define this in a lot of ways, but this is the job of all three of these committees. The ARC looks at changes, the changes to your property, the changes to your landscape. That's what they're concerned with. Community Standards, on the other hand, looks at the maintenance of your property and of your landscape. They are also looking to maintain us so that we don't look dated, so we remain attractive to particularly new buyers. The Community Standards Committee is kind of a workhorse committee. They are the ones that seem to be always out there. They are looking at your roofs, they're looking at your mailboxes, they're looking at your driveways, and they are looking at your landscaping. So we all know they're there. We all know that when they're not happy with something, we do hear from them, and we all know that we are expected to make changes as they ask. The third of those committees is Grounds, Facilities, and Securities, and they kind of fill in the gap. They look more at our master facilities. This year, they're involved with new carpeting installation. They spent a long time picking out the color. I haven't seen it, but I'm assured that we're all going to love it. They're looking at the condition and replacement of outdoor furniture. They're working with management to update the community entrances. Again, this is a community that's job is to keep Stonebridge looking as updated as it possibly can. Then we have the 4 committees that everyone loves. Now, I probably don't have to speak to them very much because you're all very aware of them. The first is Golf and Greens, Tony Maglione. This committee advises both the board and management about members' opinions about the golf course, what's good about it, what's bad about it. It talks about the membership play of the game. It works with management to set up activities. And right now, it is working on a golf cart with a golf course architect to look at how they would move the golf course forward and renovate in the years to come. The point of that is that because we have hurricanes here, like Irma, sometimes things fail. And when it comes to the golf course, if something goes wrong and we have to replace or change, let's change according to a plan and not just go back to where it was and then have to dig it back up in a couple of years. So they are very active in coming up with that. There is Tennis and Fitness with Ron Robiking. Obviously, the job is to advance the game of tennis and the use of the fitness center. What I am also asking them to do, and I'm asking House to do something very similar, is I'm asking them to come up with metrics and procedures for measuring the use of the fitness center so that in several years, when we look at renovating and or expanding the fitness center, we will have not anecdotal information, but real information on how it's used, when it's used, and by whom. I think we've all heard, or I have anyways, I have had people say to me, I can't get in a class, I can't get on a machine, there's too many people using everything. And then I've also had people come and say, I go to the fitness center, there's no one there. So let's find out what the real information is so that when we get ready to spend money, we have something to work on. Ron Overking also is chairing the Blue Zone Committee. This is a committee that's looking at healthy alternatives and options in our way of living here at Stonebridge. They are very proud that tomorrow they are going to be having a ribbon cutting at 5 o'clock. I believe it's here at the club. To welcome themselves into the Blue Zone world, because the Blue Zone organization has accepted Stonebridge as a Blue Zone community. And then there is House and Member Services, that's Betsy Gallo. And their job, as you know, is to identify events and activities we'd all like to participate in, consulting with food and beverage about what types of food we would like to eat. They are responsible for putting the little hearts on the menus, which I think we all like seeing. And they look at what should be a club-sponsored event. Now, club-sponsored event is different than just a group getting together. What club-sponsored means is that you have the ability to sign up for meeting space on a continuing basis. The requirement is that it has to be open to everybody. So they are the committee that you go to find out if you can get your group signed up for that. I am also asking them to look at metrics and procedures. If in fact we decide to increase or renovate the fitness center, we've also talked about adding a second floor. Whether that happens or not is a decision in the future. But one of the things that we want to know about, oops, did I hit something? I hit something here. One of the things that we would want to know about is how much do we need? If you belong to a committee, if you play mahjong, if you play bridge, if you play poker here, you all know that very often there is not enough space. And it's not unusual for 3 groups to be meeting here in the dining room. So rather than working on anecdotal evidence, let's come up with the numbers, let's come up with what we should measure, so that when the time comes, we will have honest information to go on. And that's the end of those committees. There are 2 others. One of them is very much standalone. It's crisis management. It is run by Peter Fleming and Hal Hill, or chaired by them, primarily with neighborhood leaders. And it is a committee that, once again, we hope never has to work in this year. But we found that after Irma, we were a little short on our procedures when it comes to emergencies. And this committee is taking that role up. The last is the Brooks Award. And this is Charlie Gangemi. And the Brooks Award is an award that's given once a year to the Volunteer of the Year here in Stonebridge. So that's our committees. That's what you have all joined for. I hope that whatever committee you are on, if you recognize an interest in another committee or something where you think your 2 committees can work together, I hope you will bring that up with the chairman of your committees. I want to thank all of you for volunteering to work for the growth and the betterment of our community. Some of us call this a permanent home. Some of us call it a temporary home. But the bottom line, it's our home. And it is in all of our interest to keep Stonebridge as viable and as healthy as we possibly can. So thank you. And I know now you're going to do the fun things.
All right, so Ben's going to talk a little bit about the tours that we're going to do. So Ben, I'll give the mic to you.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, everybody. I just want to get a quick show of hands on who plans to attend the tours coming up. Can you just, you need a quick count here? Okay, great. So I'm going to ask all of you who raised your hands to meet over by the Grill Room Bar. I'm going to split us into 2 groups. Group 1 is going to go on the kitchen tour first, and Group 2 is going to meet Mark out front and do the golf course maintenance tour, and then we're going to meet back at the bar after that and flip those tours. I'm also going to need a few volunteers out of each group to offer carpooling, so we can get everybody down to golf course maintenance and back. We're probably going to need about 4 or 5 vehicles with 4 seats each. So we'll talk about that at the grill bar. I'll meet you there in about 5 minutes. Oh yeah, and at the conclusion of the tours, we're going to have some complimentary cocktails and some snacks at the bar for y'all if you'd like to